All right. And we are back. Week 15. We're in that countdown stage.
Where the heck does the time go,
I
really?
know, it's
Jeez.
crazy. Coming at you from the Golden Harp in Vienna, Austria. As always, I'm your host, Joel Turpin. With me today, Katie Eichhorn, Philly Chris Burdett, and coming back to us after a week-long hiatus, we have David Asselin.
Missed you, buddy.
Missed you.
Missed you.
Obviously.
Yeah, but I saw myself here on some of the
Yeah.
games last week.
in different forms. But hey, since Dave was gone, we're going to make him do a little extra work today. He's going to kick us off with the week that was wrap-up. Dave.
Yeah, the week that was, it was an interesting week indeed, especially in the NFC. We saw a convincing win by the Cowboys over Chicago, in Chicago, and a disappointing loss by the Eagles to the Seahawks at home in Philly.
Tough week.
Very tough week, which in turn ties these two teams up for a divisional race in the NFC East right now, with both teams standing at 9-4, which makes the game this week all that more important.
Getting nervous already.
I'll tell you that one really quick.
Yeah.
Now, whether you see it as Mark Sanchez choking or Seattle's defense was actually have stood up in the last couple of weeks and playing like they were last year. Anyways, the Eagles will definitely need to win this week to keep a playoff run going on their side. We also saw the Steelers double up the score on the Cincinnati Bengals this past week by shutting down the Bengals at home 42-21. Tightening up an already crazy division right now. And with the Ravens' big win in Miami, followed by the Browns' tough defeat at home by the Colts. And
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Yes. It's just added to the drama that we like to call the AFC North right now. All this gives my colleague Katie here.
Angina?
Yes. For her beloved Browns, who are facing divisional leaders Bengals this week. It's a fighting chance. But the Ravens are facing Jacksonville at home. And the Steelers travel to Atlanta. It's still
Mighty Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's still anyone's
They've been a
division
thorn
to
in a number
win.
of people's sides.
They have, yeah.
Mathematically, it's still anyone's.
They have nothing to lose. So those are the teams you got to be scared of.
Yeah.
We did see a
Been that way
disappointing
since
loss
week
by
two,
the
but
49ers this week at Oakland, which makes them now 2 wins. They're now in a 3-way tie with Tennessee and help me, Jacksonville for the first round draft pick.
Right? Yes.
The 49ers, who knows what's going on in that club right now. The usual suspects, the Denver Broncos, over the Bills, New England, over the Chargers, go team. Green Bay, unconvincingly, in my opinion, over the Falcons, and Detroit over the Buccaneers, all won this past week, keeping their positioning towards postseason song and dance. And yes, the Saints lost once again at home. A season they would like to forget. But with Atlanta's recent loss to the Packers, and not convincingly, which I just had, we will see at least an 8-8 team make the playoffs this year. And first game at home.
Home field advantage at 8-8.
They'll actually play a playoff game at home.
I want it to be worse, actually. I want it to be 7-9.
Well, yeah. Seahawks won a game a few years ago against the Saints when they were 7-9 in the playoffs, and the Saints were 11-5, and they had to go in. Yeah. I want to see the exact same in reverse. I want to see the Seahawks have to go into New Orleans.
That could possibly be the scenario, but
yeah.
a lot still on the line right now. We did see Joel's beloved Chiefs lost a tough heartbreaker in Arizona.
Yeah.
As they were shut down in the second half by the Cardinals defense, and we are still not taking this Cardinals team very seriously. Week after week, we're laughing about these guys, but they're winning. They still have the best record in the NFL, not just the NFC.
It may have been the weakest overturned call I've seen in my life.
Yeah,
the late fumble
this is
but okay. I rarely complain about that.
Putting the Chiefs behind the proverbial 8 ball right now.
Definitely.
And not looking good, seeing that the enemies at the gate, the Broncos and the Chargers, are both playing this week against each other in San Diego. And I am sure, as much as Joel wouldn't like to admit it, he's probably going to root for the Broncos this week.
Well, I'm going to root for an earthquake, but barring that, the Broncos win would be more helpful than the Chargers for us, yeah.
And wrapping up what happened this week, outside the actual games this week, Cam Newton was involved in an unrelated football accident when he flipped his SUV over.
SUV?
SOV. He was with an SOB and flipped his SUV. And apparently fractured 2 vertebrae in his back, very similar to what Romo's got in the lower part of his back. So he's definitely out for the season. It doesn't look like it's going to be a career injury, but it's goodbye Cam for this year. And I would like to take my hat off just for a moment to Oregon's Marcus Mariotti.
Mariotti.
Thank you very much for winning this year's Heisman Trophy collegiate football. The Heisman Trophy is like the Oscar or the most valuable player in college football.
Yes,
and
quite
chances are,
convincing.
although he is a
Yeah.
junior, and I think he will stay another year with the Ducks, chances are you'll be hearing a lot of this guy.
Recruited by Chip Kelly, I would say as well.
Yes, I think you would say that. So
Chip
other
Kelly-
than that,
know.
usual suspects winning. It's going to be a very interesting week this week going into football.
Okay. Hey, just a quick question. I have not warned the guys I'm going to do this. I want a gut
Ouch.
feeling, a gut check. Pick either the AFC or the NFC, and I want to hear just your gut reaction going down the stretch. When it's all over, who's the last team in and the first team out?
Katie.
So
Jesus.
like the 6 and 7. I'll start.
Yeah,
I'm
off, please.
gonna go with in the AFC. Baltimore is the last team in, and we'll just say the Chiefs are the first team out. So 6 and 7. That would be my guess going down the stretch, approximately.
Whew. That's a really loaded question.
It is loaded. I
don't-
want a gut reaction.
I know. Okay, all right. Let's see. First team in.
Last team in.
Last
First
team in.
out.
Wait, last team in.
So
first.
the 6th seed and the 7th seed. So the last team in, the 6th
Okay,
seed.
we're talking about
first
like
team
the
out.
like bubble.
Who are the Who are
Okay,
the bubble
if it-
teams?
put
the
me
one
in
that's
it,
gonna
yeah.
make it, and the one that's not.
I can't do it on my AFC. Like it's too hard
Then
on the
do the-
AFC.
do the NFC.
I know. I'm just thinking.
You got Detroit. You got Seattle.
Oh yeah. I say
got-
I say Seattle's out. I'm still not behind this. I would definitely.
So then Detroit makes it in.
Detroit
and
makes
Seattle
it in.
makes
Seattle's out.
Okay.
I don't. Oh god. See now when you put
There
me on
you
the
go.
spot for AFC
Nope,
like that.
you don't have to. One or the other.
Thank you,
One or
'cause-
the other.
Thank you.
Just
'cause
pick one. Pick
that's
whatever one you like.
conflicting.
Listen, I'm going to make it pretty simple here. The first team out, or the first team out, right?
Yes,
This is the first
yes, the
team
7th
out
seed.
will be in the NFC, and that will be then the Dallas Cowboys. And the last team in, I will say, will be the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
Very good. I will go AFC, and I will say that the Ravens will be the first team out.
Okay.
And I may be going out on a limb a little bit, but I'm going to say the Chargers are the first one in.
Last one in. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to get a gut reaction on that, so let's
Chargers,
screw them off a
although
little
the
bit.
Chargers lost disappointing, and they played quite well against New England last week. Although they were shut down, the game was actually closer than what the score showed.
I think the Chargers are going to lose their last
Chargers
3
are on a roll
games and
right
stay
now.
out by far. But hey, that's just me.
Opposite spectrums
I
here.
did
Yeah?
pick them in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
By the way,
And you were
I
wrong.
just want to give a quick compliment to Dave's tie.
Yes.
It's a beautiful tie.
There's
The
a lot of
second
stuff
nicest-
going on right now, but
I got it from
I mean-
my old friend Chris Kringle. You might know the guy.
I know him. We're good buddies. Yeah.
When Kringle can dingle.
Fair enough.
On that note,
Or mingle with a Kringle.
Okay, the last few weeks we've been breaking down football teams, talking about some of the best players in NFL history, some of the best players in the game today. Positionally, we've hit the tight ends, we've talked about wide receivers, and we've talked about some defensive players last week. This week, I think we're going to get a little more argument going on, a little more head-to-head. We'll see how it plays out, but we're talking this week about the running back position, and we want to hear everybody's opinion on the best running back in the history of the NFL to kick things off. And I'm going to let Katie go first, chronologically a little bit here. So,
yeah, I'm going to talk about undoubtedly the best Brown in history, namely Jim Brown, aptly named. This guy is an all-around athlete, just really one of your old school performers in terms of excelling in a variety of ways, even going on to an acting career. I just want to throw out some quick history for you. This guy was, all right, let's switch sports. High school basketball, averaging 38 points per game, a record only broken by Carl Yastrzemski,
The Red Sox, thank you very much. I knew
a
this.
Red
I
Sox
knew this.
baseball player.
Okay.
This is just crazy. Another stat, probably the last decent thing to come out of Syracuse football.
Wow.
All right.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
D. McNabb, please.
Donovan McNabb,
Watch
yeah.
your tongue.
All right.
Watch your
Okay.
tongue.
Okay.
I'm
you,
sorry,
did,
sorry.
you did say
Oh,
decent, not really good, right? Yeah, so absolutely.
Okay,
Sorry.
a Syracuse
Enough said,
legend
though.
for
Enough said,
football.
enough said.
Also inducted in the Syracuse Lacrosse Hall of Fame. He played both. Won in the final game of their season, 61-7 win over Colgate, in which Jim Brown scored 6 touchdowns, and for each of those 6 touchdowns, kicked 6 extra points as well.
But old school ball. Boy.
Oh, So
Show off, really.
Yeah, it's
A
like-
little bit of a ball hog. That's what I'm
They
hearing.
didn't wear like cups during
Yeah.
that.
Probably not. Leather helmets or.
So to give you an idea of the time frame, we talk about Jim Brown football. He played for 57 from 1957 to 1965 for the Cleveland Browns. The first person to ever achieve 100 rushing touchdowns, and that's back in the day of a 12-game season. So he played 4 seasons in the 12-game season, 5 seasons with 13-game seasons. And so that feat is even more impressive. Few players have actually done it since. A handful have, but he was the first to set that mark. He had 100 TDs in 93 games, which is crazy. Now, I believe my colleagues are going to talk about the guy that broke that record, Mr. Tomlinson, a bit later. I could just go with stats all day, but all around, this guy is just an impressive athlete on and off the field. He's still Cleveland's leading rusher. That's a record, the oldest franchise record ever. He held that, set that in 1963. Rushing record, excuse me. The largest rushing record, or oldest rushing record, still held by Jim Brown from 1963. Finished his career with 12,312 yards and 106 touchdowns. Some of those rushing, some of those catching, some of those apparently passed the ball to himself. I don't know. What was he not doing? Kicking his own, he's kicking off, he's receiving, who knows what he's doing. But an all-around good guy and impressive. Listed as Sports Illustrated's number 2 NFL player of all time.
Who's number 1?
I forgot to check that.
Is that Johnny U?
It could
It's
be.
hard to say,
It
yeah.
could be. I should have checked who he's second to.
So, man, that got
Yeah.
if you're talking in the last century, I think probably Johnny U.
Yeah.
Y.A. Tittle could be also Y.A. Tittle.
Could be any number of players. Could be Joe Montana.
We'll check it in
There's
a
a lot
break
of
and we'll get
options.
back.
Yeah.
Lawrence Taylor, maybe.
I'll see.
If they were basing it on hookers and cocaine.
Exactly.
That's,
Yeah.
More to
what
follow.
the criteria was. So.
I like that. But those are the stats you need to hear about.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, listen. Here's my take on Jim Brown. The guy was an absolute man amongst boys during his time in Cleveland when he was playing in the NFL. When he was playing, I mean, obviously the things that you say and what he achieved statistically in the relatively short period of time that he played football was absolutely disgusting. The knock I have against him, it's not necessarily a knock against him. It's a knock really more against the era. And how do you really compare today's players to the times that were going on there? I mean, you are talking about guys nowadays that are training 12 months a year, putting stuff in their bodies, who knows what it is. The stakes are a whole heck of a lot higher. I think the talent overall is a lot stronger. The game's a lot quicker from the defensive side of things and those types of things. It's hard to really knock Jim Brown, not only because of obviously the stats that he put up. As far as whether he was a good man or not, there's two sides of Jim Brown off the field from my side of things. One is a little bit of volatility, gets himself into a little bit of trouble periodically, but I like to think about him on the other side, which is his activism, actually. He really does a lot of great things for the disadvantaged people, the people kind of really down in their luck, down in the trenches and stuff like that. And so from my side of things, he's really a guy that sits down and gets himself some extra points from my side of things from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, for me, again, from my side of things, the tough thing is how would he really compare in today's game? Because I just really think that the defense in general is a bit weaker at that time.
Yeah, and the game has changed incredibly since he was playing. I don't think there's a good way to balance those stats, other than the fact that he still holds a number of records.
For a 12-game season.
For a
Yeah.
12-game season.
So.
And he was probably the only guy out of the group that we're going to talk about. I don't know everybody else's notes, but I think he's probably the only guy that was actually in the Dirty Dozen. So that's gonna put it over the top. Really, when it's said and done.
And Mars
Yeah.
attacks.
Right.
In Mars attacks, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So-
That's true.
That's going to be tough to
Wait, I
beat.
think
But we'll see what we can do.
Like when Chris does his advantage, disadvantage, point. I think
Yeah.
he just got 2 extra
That's
bonus
two big-
points right there.
two big ones
Guys,
right
that's
there.
ridiculous.
All right, Philly, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so for me, listen, it's Walter Payton, aka Sweetness, and you know, part of me feels bad about what I did last week, and that was to basically deify some really sleazy guys. So I decided not only to go with, in my opinion, the best running back of all time, but also go to one of the greatest guys of all time in the league. I mean, for crying out loud, they call it the Walter Payton Award, which they've renamed for Walter Payton, based upon what you do off the field and also what you do on the field. The guy was just an absolute class act forever. So hopefully I can maybe do a little bit. My mom will be a little bit
Do a
more
little
proud of me
justice
this
to
week
the
compared
nice
to last
guys.
week. But that's cool. Yeah, I mean, what's there to say? I mean, obviously he had tragic death of cancer at a young age, 45 years old in 1999. And actually at his funeral, John Madden, who we all know and maybe love, maybe don't love, depending on who
Not
you
so
are.
much, no.
But nevertheless, when he was interviewed at that point, he said Walter Payton was the greatest, not only running back, but the greatest football player that he has ever seen and has ever read about as far as playing the game. Not only was he a runner and just absolutely rolled people over. I mean, this guy was the type of guy who loved contact. You never saw this guy run out of bounds. He's always making the hit to try to get that extra little yardage on him. And oftentimes you think about it the reverse way. The defense ends up kind of tiring out these runners that are running. People used to say that Walter Payton actually would tire out the linebackers because he would just hit them so hard. I mean, absolutely fantastic. Was the all-time leading rusher until some idiot named Emmitt Smith, who I'm sure some idiot will actually take as their best running back of all time, which is really a horrible decision in my opinion.
Probably not.
But nevertheless, he was the leading rusher of all time at his time of retirement. But he was also a great pass catcher as well. So adding additional yardage from that side of things, and kind of one of those first kind of guys who really was catching the football as well as running the football, which we see a lot nowadays in the NFL. But he's also a heck of a blocker. I mean, this guy could bench press 390 pounds and could leg press 700 pounds.
What?
So what? Yes.
What?
So when guys were coming, when the defensive line was coming at him, and the linebackers were coming at him, he added that extra line of protection for the quarterback. I mean, really, this guy was absolutely an all-around player, and he holds the record for the most touchdown passes by a non-quarterback at 8. Walter Payton, he's thrown 8 touchdown passes as well. The guy is absolutely well-rounded and a fantastic person.
I think J.J. Watt is on his way to breaking this.
He's getting
This season, maybe.
He's getting there, exactly. He's a 9-time All-Pro. He's a league MVP, Super Bowl champion with the beloved 1985 Bears under the Ditka era, and also just an absolute professional. He showed up every day. He kept his mouth shut. He just worked hard. He was a great influence on the guys that were coming up. The only thing that I ever heard him bad say about teammates, coaches, or whatever was in 1985 when they gave the ball to the refrigerator Perry to push it into the touchdown at the end of the season, at the end of the game. I'm sorry?
Who they playing?
They were paying
Patriots.
Joe
New England Patriots,
Mama.
yes.
Exactly. He was ticked off about that. He thought he deserved the ball at that time to put it in. That's really the only bad thing that I've ever heard about this guy. And his work ethic was absolutely legendary as well. When he was playing football in college, when his brother made it to the NFL, he would be in southern Mississippi in the heat, sweltering summer times. They had a little river that ran through there, the sand banks that were up this big steep hill. The guy was out there in the sweltering, disgusting hot, running up and down. The guy was an absolute beast, absolute fantastic guy. Gosh, what else to say? I mean, for me, it's Walter Payton, and obviously, I mean, the name of the franchise, Chicago Bears as well, to be down as one of the best there as well is just absolutely fantastic. So, sweetness.
I had a feeling we were going to break into Danny Boy at some
Yeah. He does sound sweet. That's great.
point. There was a lot of sweetness in that commentary.
There was. Not as many hookers as last week. So
No,
that's
he,
kind of different.
yeah.
I'll take care of that shortly.
Okay, good. Yeah.
We need to fill the gap.
Yeah, gotcha. Fair
Fill the
enough.
gap, please.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I can't argue with my colleagues here about Walter Payton's sweetness or Jim Brown, but seeing how these were already taken, I was off last week. I settled for Emmitt Smith, which was not a bad choice altogether. During his long professional career, he is now the NFL's all-time rushing leader, breaking the record of sweetness, Walter Payton himself. He played for 3 Super Bowl winning teams with the Dallas Cowboys, and he's the only running back to ever win the Super Bowl championship, NFL's most valuable player, NFL's rushing crown, and the Super Bowl most valuable player, all in the same season. That's quite an accomplishment. He is one of
Bit of
only
a show
4.
off thing,
Yeah, he's only one of, and he can dance if he wants to.
Yeah.
He's also one of only 4 running backs to lead the NFL in 3 or more consecutive seasons, right behind Steve Van Buren. I don't know if you know this guy. Jim Brown and Earl Campbell.
Right?
Yeah.
Earl Campbell,
Earl.
the beast. Yes. While playing, despite his college success, he wasn't drafted all that high. I thought he was too small to play.
Yep.
Smith was the first player in NFL history to rush for 1,400 yards or more in 5 consecutive seasons, behind Jim Brown and Tomlinson, the old Chargers. And are the only players with 10 straight touchdown seasons to start their careers. Again, the first player in NFL history with 11 consecutive seasons of 1,000 yards or more. That's saying something. And the first to post 1,100-yard post rushing seasons in a career. The guy's got amazing stats. I have to read them. There's just so many here. He is the NFL's all-time rushing leader with attempts with over 4,409. Smith is the only player to post 3 postseasons with 19 or more touchdowns. Also holds the record for most games in a season with a touchdown and the most games in a season with a rushing touchdown at 15. Incredible. I got pages of this stuff, but I'll keep it down to a dull roar here. Like I said, he currently holds the NFL's rushing yards with over 18,350 yards. 55 over Sweetness. He leads all running backs with 164 career rushing touchdowns and 175 total touchdowns. Ranks him second only to the legendary
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
Whom we agreed, I think, to leave out of. Oh no, that was 2 weeks ago.
Yes, that was during the wide receivers.
That was during the wide receivers. That
But
doesn't
we
make
won't
sense.
talk about him today either, too much.
He's been deified already.
He won 3 Super Bowl rings with the legendary Cowboys of the 90s, and the team of doom with Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman, and Emmett. In 1995, Smith passed Tony Dorsett of Dallas, Mr. Tom, franchise was rushing for 100 yards in each of his first 4 games in the season. He is he was the oldest player in NFL history to throw a first touchdown pass. He only had 1 attempt through 1 touchdown pass, 21 yards.
With the Cardinals.
With the
In
Cardinals.
his heyday, yeah.
Right.
His playing style, the guy was consistently effective. He wasn't, not dazzling in style, but he could dart it, and he was a north to south runner. And it was hard to bring this down. People say he wasn't all that big. He had hacks him. He had these thighs of a horse. They said it's the yards he got after the line of scrimmage, after you hit him, and he was a hard guy to bring down. He was often compared to the Barry Sanders of the Detroit Lions, which none of us have, which I'm surprised.
Oddly, that is
I've
odd.
got
Oddly
Barry
enough.
Sanders.
Yeah, come on.
I was gonna say, how would that slip through the cracks?
Yeah.
And observers agree that both Smith and Sanders were among the greatest men ever to play the game. And when Mark said something about the Miami guy last week, I did a little homework. He actually, after retiring, because he had 2 mediocre seasons with that, so he played 12, just like Peyton. You can say what you want. But he did have those 2 extra seasons, more than Peyton did, which probably brought him over gave him the rushing title.
Yeah, in the end, as far
All
as the
that being
season, so
said-
just real quick on that whole thing, it's the statistic for me as far as if you want it. I mean, listen, the guy's a fantastic player. There's nobody who's going to question that. To me, if you take a look at trying to identify the stats and that type of thing, it's Emmitt Smith played 226 games. Walter Payton played 190, so he had a 36-game advantage on him. Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
And up about 300 yards fewer yards from scrimmage.
Can't think of it. Statistics
So it's,
do not lie.
exactly.
As Ronald Reagan, facts, that's up and thing. After retired, he did the same thing that this Miami guy did last week. You'll have to rewind the tape. After retiring from Phoenix, he signed a contract.
One-day
The one-day contract.
with Dallas for
Zach
$1
Thomas
and
was the
retired
guy,
a Cowboy. I got to go with Emmitt Smith on this one.
Okay. So that leaves it down to me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the yin to the yang here. Barry Sanders, who was if you were a fan of football in the 90s, if you liked the run, 90s was really halcyon days for running backs. Nowadays, it's all about the quarterbacks. But in the 90s, there was a lot of big running backs. You had, Thurman Thomas in Buffalo. You had all sorts of various Chiefs like Christian Okoye that were doing well. You had big running backs all over, but the 2 biggest, far and away, Emmitt Smith for the Dallas Cowboys and Barry Sanders for the Detroit Lions. And they would trade off years of leading the league in rushing, and they would always be, first or second. It was those 2
Sanders
guys.
got the overall rushing title during their stretch.
Yeah, but it was always a back and forth, and those were the guys. They were up for MVP awards. Normally that's a quarterback only club, but every now and then running backs can break through, and those guys were able to do so. Anyway, Barry Sanders, 1989 draft, came out of Oklahoma State to the Detroit Lions, 3rd pick. It was definitely, he's definitely was the face of their franchise for the remaining time that he was there, and pretty much after then, still is. But it was also a little unfortunate for him to be there because that's been a very moribund franchise ever since the 50s or 40s or whenever they last played well.
Imagine playing for the Lions.
Yeah, he led them to their only NFC Championship game in 1991. This is how sad that group has been for a long time.
One of 4 teams to have never gone to the Super Bowl.
Yes, one of 4 teams have never gone to the
What's
Super
other
Bowl.
one, Katie?
Is there another one you could? Yes. Anyway,
Sorry.
so yeah, they've compared to them, Cleveland has a more exciting.
It's
playoff
hard
history,
to say,
so.
but yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
But he did lead them to the playoffs many times, and I'm just saying he was in a tough place as far as I'm concerned. Before I get into his stats, he was coming from a place where he's in on a team that was continually underachieving and was led by some very suspect coaches. They would not give him the ball at the goal line. They would, they ran like a run and shoot offense for the first 6 or 7 years of his career, which if anybody was around back then was a very wide open offense. It was, you basically got rid of your tight ends most of the time, and you just had 4 wide receivers on the field, and you were trying to dump off, and so there wasn't a lot of blocking. So what you saw from Barry Sanders a lot was guys in the backfield getting their arms on him before he got the ball. And then he would either get tackled for a loss or he would break it for 50 yards. It would be one or the other. He was very much one of those home run hitter type backs. He averaged over 1,500 yards a season, and when he retired, he was about 1,400 yards shy of Walter Payton's then record. It was a very abrupt retirement. Nobody saw it coming, other than maybe close friends or something. But on the outside, nobody was ready for his retirement because he was still very much in his prime. Very similar to Jim Brown in that aspect, that both guys retired earlier than it seemed they needed to from a football standpoint, and now maybe they're probably happier now that they're able to walk and have all their body parts intact. But from a record standpoint, he definitely hurt himself there, but he didn't care, and he never did. In fact, one of the things he said was he was kind of happy to retire and leave the record in Peyton's hands at the time. Yeah. Similarly, a story that always was interesting to me as a Chiefs fan was his first season in 1989, 89-90 season. He ended up 10 yards shy of the rushing title, which went to Christian Okoye of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the reason he ended up shy of the rushing title was in that last game they were playing, the Lions had basically wrapped up the game. They'd won it. It was a blowout. The game was over. Coach went to him and said, "Hey, you're 10 yards shy of the rushing title. You want to go back in and get that?" And he's like, "Well, the game's over, why put me in there?"
And you don't.
The game's over.
That's a really unselfish thing. You see the guys in baseball nowadays. They're like 2 points up, and they know if they sit out the last game, they'll keep their batting title intact. And they're like, I don't want to play because I'm gonna. That's a really cool thing to do. Yeah.
Definitely. So I've got all sorts of respect for him for that, and that. This was easily my favorite player of all time that was not a Kansas City Chief. I actually even owned a Barry Sanders jersey.
Wow.
I think I've still got somewhere. Somebody picked up for me. It even made me kind of a Lions fan in the 90s. It's not like it's carried over, but they were one of the teams I was rooting for all the time. And
you didn't
was
have a
hoping would be better.
hatred for the Lions.
Yeah, exactly. It helps they're in the NFC. So, when it comes down to me, who would you rather go and watch a highlight film of? Out of all these guys, look, you guys are great. They're all great backs. But if I was going to sit down and watch,
Sanders, what was he like? 1 meter 70?
Yeah,
something?
he was really short.
He was a short little guy.
Like a little ping pong ball.
He was compact.
Pinball ball watching.
Very strong. I don't know what he benched. I don't know what he pressed with his legs, but I do know he was hard as heck to tackle.
Yeah.
And anytime you watch these things of him spinning and spinning and spinning and going over people, and
his ability to change direction
Yes.
was just absolutely phenomenal to watch.
On a dime.
yeah.
He could turn on a dime.
I could
he was
watch those
actually-
at any time.
He was a good guy to watch, unlike Jim Brown and maybe Bob.
I don't even know if they have video
Peyton was
footage
very
of Jim
similar to
Brown,
Sanders,
but
Brown and
Smith
were both
Smith was no
up
fun
the
to
gut,
watch.
followed
Just
their-
up the gut. He was amazing, but
blockers and whatnot. These guys were fun to watch.
yeah.
When you'd start on this side, but end up all the way on the other side of the field and buzzed for 20 yards.
And so, I mean, when you get down to it, you got the leaders in total yardage, and then you got two guys that may well have been the leaders in total yardage had they stuck around a little longer, had they sacrificed more of their body for the game. So there's definitely arguments to be made among all four, but Barry Sanders was the best. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
So-
you know what? I just one interesting.
Isn't it?
One interesting thing about Barry Sanders too is that when he decided to retire and he spoke and he ended up with a lawsuit with the Detroit Lions
Yes,
about,
yeah.
hey, you need to pay us part of your bonus back because you're not playing the whole time and all these types of things. And eventually Barry Sanders had some bad blood with the management there. He ends up going and having a lawsuit with the organization. And at the end of the day, he was going to agree to settle out of court with the lawsuit, pay all the money back if the ownership would allow him to become a free agent and sign with another football team. And the management of Detroit disagreed with this. They would not do it. And as a result, had they actually maybe allowed him to do that and have a chance to go with the winning football team, I think he very well might have continued to play football and very well might be the leading rusher of all time at this point.
I can't completely blame him. Would have been nice to see him play a few more years. I remember at the time how completely disappointed I
Out of
was.
the
because
blue.
that he
It was out of the blue.
He's not playing anymore.
It was horrible.
He had
It-
another 3 or 4 years. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
he could have easily put up some big numbers, but anyway, when it's all said and done, they've all got good solid cases. There's no clear cut like you have with Jerry Rice in the receiver category. You've got a lot of arguments, and I think the next week when we get into the quarterback position, we may see it even more. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there to argue over it. So
Y.A. Tittle being one of them.
10 years from now, it's
Y.A.
gonna be
Tittle.
probably
Otto Graham,
Jimmy.
who I think could argue as being the best Brown of all time, if you're talking about.
Johnny U, Bart Starr.
Yeah,
We'll get into
that's
that
going
next
way old school,
But-
but
Yeah.
I-
well, you
it's
can't go
hard to-
new school and talk about the best Brown of all time. So sorry to say,
I'm
you
gonna,
gotta
I'm
go
gonna
old
dust
school.
off my Kosar jersey and wear that next week.
Oh, Miami. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Hurricane, I'm sorry.
Hurricanes, yeah. What are you gonna do? Okay. Running backs are so great, though. We're not going to talk quite as much in this next bit, but I do want to give a little bit of time to talk about some of the other players. There's tons of them out there that we could go over. Guys that put up big numbers or just were fun to watch. I'm going to let everybody, though, throw out one or two honorable mentions in this all-time category real quick. Dave, who you got?
Well, I'm doing this only for Tom Terrific, our director and producer. I was going to go with Earl Campbell or even Franco Harris of the Pittsburgh
Franco.
Steelers.
Two excellent choices, by the way.
Excellent choices.
Yeah. But what did you settle
I
for?
was pressured and I settled for another Cowboy, Tony Dorsett.
Yeah.
Tony
Who is,
Dorsett.
who is Tony
The
Dorsett?
legacy that is Tony
Yeah.
Dorsett. Okay.
I had
Tony
him at number
Dorsett rushed
20,
for almost
22 on my
30
list, I think. But
he
go
rushed
ahead.
for almost 13,000 yards, got 77 touchdowns in his 12-year career. He did falter towards the end of his career, so most of these yards and touchdowns came early in his career.
Yeah, bit of a flaming. Yeah.
The guy still holds on a record of, he broke for a 99-yard touchdown against the Vikings, which is the longest run from scrimmage in NFL history, and it still is today.
Well, it's going to be
It's
hard to break
amazing.
it by much. That's for sure.
Here's a notable fact about this. Here's a notable fact about this one. The Cowboys only had 10 men on the field at the time because the fullback, Ron Springs,
Okay.
was unaware that a play was being called.
Now that is
So he
impressive,
just wanted
yeah.
10 guys on the field.
That adds a little something. You get a multiplier at that point.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Of his first 9 seasons, over 1,000 yards in every season except for one, and that was it was a strike.
Strike
Yeah,
shortened.
it was in 1982. It was a 9-game season that year where he still ran up almost 800 yards that year. Honorable mention goes to another Cowboy, Tony Dorsett.
Okay. I'm gonna go next. I've got Marcus Allen. Came out of USC, went to the LA Raiders. That's where the Raiders were at the time. Played with the Raiders and then later for the Kansas City Chiefs from 1982 to 1997. He definitely, to me, has the distinction of he's possibly the greatest goal line back of all time. This guy just really had a nose for the end zone. Ended up with 123 rushing touchdowns, 145 total touchdowns. 12,000 yards, rushing yards, 17,000 from scrimmage, approximately. The thing was, he had a really odd career. He also came out really on fire early on. He was the MVP in 1985 of the league. His career highlight in '84, Super Bowl MVP, 191 rushing yards, caught a couple of passes, a couple of touchdowns, including at the time, record 74-yard touchdown run in the Super Bowl. Just an amazing personal performance. And then at some point, the Raiders ownership, specifically the crazy guy Al Davis that ran the Raiders franchise for forever, decided that he didn't like.
And they're still suffering.
Yeah, well, he didn't like Marcus Allen anymore, and Marcus Allen, he went on Monday Night Football and said that this guy is a cancer to our team,
Yeah, what's up with that?
and yet he forced him to stay on the team. Once again, very similar to the Barry Sanders situation, would not get rid of him. He brought in Bo Jackson, who would also get a nod from me as being one of the most talented running backs
Hey,
in all
Bo knows.
time.
Toughest
So
dude.
knows that.
Who knows?
Just an amazing talent who also played professional football for the Kansas City Royals.
Baseball.
Yeah,
Baseball.
Baseball.
AL championship. Yeah, there you go.
Baseball.
Did I not say baseball? What
That's
did
right.
I say?
And he,
Football,
my,
that's
my,
right.
my
Football,
favorite
yeah.
Bo Jackson is when he snapped the bat
Bat.
over his knee
Yes.
like a toothpick.
Yeah,
That's
that
amazing.
guy,
He was a
he was
beast.
crazy.
He
So I
was a
mean,
beast.
people understood. I mean, yeah, if you're going to replace him with somebody, at least it was a talented back. But at some point, they actually, at Al Davis's behest, had bounced Marcus Allen to 4th on their running back depth chart in Oakland. So this is crazy. And just to show that it wasn't only because he had, lost an edge, he went to Kansas City, had a career renaissance for about 5 years there, scored tons of touchdowns, put up, they weren't 1,000-yard seasons, they were 8, 9, 100-yard seasons or whatever, but he was running back by committee type situation and was definitely the head of that committee, let's say. Anyway, great guy, other than being a cancer to the Raiders, which I actually think is probably a good thing. So, yeah, that's my guy. Katie, who you got?
I'm going to go ahead and pick up the slack since Chris decided to talk about really philanthropic, great human beings.
I have a lot to make up for last week.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'll pick another boy out of USC and go with Orenthal James Simpson. The Juice. O.J. Simpson, probably better known to most of you for a number of other things than his football career. He actually played 2 years at community college before he was taken up by USC in just outside of, actually, I think in Oakland.
Okay.
Somewhere in a little bit no-cal, as it were, Northern California. But he plays 67 and 68 at community college, then 69 and 70 at USC, suffering a terrible defeat in the Rose Bowl of 71, where my parents fell in love to the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Shout out.
Mom, Dad, there you go. So, sorry,
Shot
I got a little teary there. Anyway,
Yeah, fair enough.
he's going to be picked up as first-round pick, actually the first overall pick by the Buffalo Bills, where he spent the majority of his career. He is the first player ever to record 2,000 yards in a season, and this is, mind you, in a 12-game season. We haven't gone to 14 yet. Oh, wait, no, maybe it's a 14 game
game.
before
14
we've gone to
to
16. There
yeah.
we go. He's in the middle group,
Yeah.
the transition
This
period.
league is so crazy. It's
It is.
And
changing.
the record, he's the only one to do it in a 14
But he
game
played
season.
for a Bills team that was actually basically like the Lions of their day for the AFC. They were
Yeah.
not
When his first
powerhouse
season with
team.
the Bills, they went 1-11
Yeah, but the guy
or
ran
1-11
like
and
1,200
1 or
yards.
something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So they
Exactly.
were probably just stacking the line against
it
him. and
was
still
it was
couldn't stop
it was
him.
an
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson show. Now he averaged 1,500 yards from 72 to 76. Did a 2-year stint in San Francisco. Then the real fun happened. This guy has been on trial so many times, you don't even want to know. Where is O.J. Simpson now, you might ask?
in prison.
Serving a 33-year sentence in Las Vegas, or just outside Vegas, for felony kidnapping, theft, armed robbery, grand larceny.
Hey, he was just trying to get his stuff back.
Yeah,
Hey, if the glove,
Yeah.
if the glove
He's just
don't
trying to
fit,
get
you
Stuff
know?
back, man.
Yeah, well,
One of the greatest lines from Howard Cosell used to say on Monday Night Football. He used to say, "Miami may have the oranges, but Buffalo's got the
the
chips."
Jews. And I mean, I read some. I didn't know that he was also known as the power station, power company, electric company,
Electric company.
That was
Yeah.
it.
That was a
because
big
juice was
rival
slang
to,
for
Yeah.
Sesame Street.
Yeah.
So juice was for electricity, and I got this whole background. It was very interesting. Also had an acting career like Jim Brown.
Naked Gun
Gun
movies.
movies.
Yeah.
Come on, let's-
Gosh, now we got
I think he
another
actually got
contender.
hurt
Yeah.
in those
Nordberg.
movies in his football career.
Yeah, maybe.
playing Nordberg, the
Nordberg,
ill-fated sidekick. So I'm giving some love to OJ. He holds a number of records, or is at least in the top 10 in a number of stats. Unfortunately, he eclipsed his own career with his off-the-field antics later.
And
That's one way to put it. Yeah,
Because of
Feel
those
antics.
antics, you forget what a great rusher he really
Yeah,
was.
I mean,
Yeah.
primarily that was what he should be remembered for, and unfortunately, he dug his own grave quite literally,
Exactly.
or somebody else's.
Somebody else's.
Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows
no-
where the bodies are buried?
You know what? It's funny. It's funny. We have these events in our life that, like, our parents know where they were when JFK got shot.
You know, I was
And these type of things. I know two things. I know, number one, when he was riding in the white Bronco.
Yes, that's the one I remember.
I was
Where were
picking
you
up
in the Bronco?
with Eric Wright. I was picking up my date to the 9th grade dance, Brooke Thomas at Rian Harris's house. Shout out to you guys. I don't know what you're up to, but hello. And then follow up with the fact I know exactly where I was when the verdict was.
We got let out. We got let out of school.
I was in
They let us out of
11th
class.
grade geometry
Fair enough.
class. My boy Civ had this little portable radio, and our teacher was a strict, mean lady. Was like, "Yeah, you know what? Listen, Civ, you listen to it, and you give us the news."
Give us the nod.
And he did it. It was innocent. We were also like,
They let us out of class for it. They just dismissed class, and we all got together in the auditorium and watched the thing live.
They didn't want you to riot, probably. They were worried about
In a,
the...
in a
Unbelievable.
predominantly Jewish all-girls
But
school, I don't
you're
think that was
correct.
going to
You
be
know where you were.
much of an issue,
Exactly.
but...
Yeah, you
It's
know
like
how it
9/11.
is.
You know exactly where you were. I was camping in New Hampshire by myself and had a transistor radio, and I go, there are 10,000 police cars following
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson down the highway in Las Vegas. I was like, what the hell's up with this?
we should have been
Yeah.
we should have been excited about our hot dates and stuff, and we're sitting with his dad watching the chase on TV.
Well, but
It was
because
unbelievable.
before the chase, I mean, I was one that was definitely leaning towards, okay, there's something
Oops.
weird here. Maybe no, I'm thinking, okay, I like this guy. He's
Yeah.
fun. He's got to be innocent, right? And then the chase made everybody
Wait.
assume that he was guilty. I mean,
But he was innocent.
well, yeah, I mean, he was innocent, of course.
If it
Yeah.
fits, you must, or no, if
Exactly.
it doesn't
Yeah.
fit, you
Must
must
acquit.
acquit.
Exactly.
So I know I'm saying I had a black moment of doubt there in between
Yeah.
because of the chase, but
Exactly.
I was very happy to find out he was innocent.
It's
When it was
also,
all said and
I also
done.
think it was a club thing,
But if you,
too. Yeah.
can you think about? I can't think of more things, but I can still name all the players. Remember Kato Kalin?
Oh, yeah.
And George Ito, and I'm going.
Wow,
I
it's
can name
crazy.
all
Johnny
of them.
Carson.
Marsha Clark.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Jeez.
No.
Guys, you know, listen, I'm gonna wrap this up really
Do
quick
it,
because
do it.
I like we might as well not even say it. I go with LaDainian Tomlinson on this one, and for me it's interesting. The guy is such a fabulous player. I don't know what really it is about him or what it was about him. I think perhaps part of it was because he played for the Chargers. They made the playoffs sometimes. They had some good runs with him, and they just never really seemed to get over the hump. He was a real humble guy. He was also a Walter Payton Man of the Year, a winner, and just really one of those guys who showed up to the football field and just played and did that whole thing. He really had a nose for the end zone. He was third all time in touchdowns scored, fifth all time of most rushing yards. And you know, it's funny. I don't disagree with anyone else's selections here as far as who you went with and stuff, but I don't think LaDainian Tomlinson comes up within the people's first 50 people. Maybe that's probably too high, but anyway, just a really underrated guy. He was also a 6-time All-Pro player, 2006 MVP player. He was the face of the San Diego Chargers. Just a real humble, down-to-earth guy, and I guess we had
player.
He did break
Yeah.
that Jim Brown record.
yeah, and we had
Yeah.
to, and we also had to kind of like get away from OJ and
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of end
And come back
this
to
on
the-
that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, real quick, we're going to talk about what we think about the current best situation. And something to note here is this is we're transitioning eras in football here. I think the running back is being de-emphasized, and there's still a lot of rushing going on, but it's being done by committee. It's not being done with a single featured back as often, and so you've got fewer and fewer candidates for being the best. And to me, it wouldn't surprise me, out of all the positions we've talked about so far, if you had this same show 10, 20 years from now, you'd still be talking about the same guys. I don't know how many guys there are going to be to come in from this era onward that are going to have a chance to supplant any of these records. Whereas when we talk about quarterbacks next week, we're going to say, but now it's being destroyed by this guy, and running backs, I think, is maybe starting to take a little bit of a backseat, and I'll be interested to see if it ever comes back around again.
Yeah, I think that'll be the interesting thing. I mean, obviously there's dynamics and there's change over time, but I think you're right. We're in an era right now where that's going to be tough.
That being said, we do have some candidates for the best current back in the NFL. I think we're going to skip Mr. All-Day Adrian Peterson out of our group, seeing as how he hasn't played this year and we don't really know how he's going to be when he comes back. We'll just leave him off to the side right now in this discussion and talk about some of the other guys out there. I'll kick this one off with my personal hometown candidate, Jamal Charles.
Bob Charles.
Reminds me a lot of Barry Sanders in a lot of ways. Another fast guy, another guy that makes you miss, another guy that does it through jukes and stuff. Although he doesn't get enough credit, he can run inside. He does have some tough moves and some little bit of power to his game. But another guy that's not really the big bruising back, and more the make him miss and run the length of the field type guy. It's his 7th season for Kansas City. Five where he was a starter, 1 where he was lost to injury. So really it's more like 5 seasons as far as looking at what he's done in that time. He's already the Chiefs' all-time leading rusher. We don't have anybody like Jim Brown in our background, so it was a little easier to pass.
He's the leading rusher of the Chiefs.
Yeah, he's nearing 7,000 yards total, 9,000 from scrimmage already.
That's pathetic.
Got 57 touchdowns. I don't know that you got much better on the Patriots. I'm curious to hear that.
No. I don't even got a Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. 5.6 yard average for his career, and he's all about speed and elusiveness. Also very much a nose for the end zone. So he's definitely one of the leading candidates for the best rusher in the NFL nowadays. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with the hometown guy as well, LaShawn McCoy. Kind of a similar back in a lot of ways to Jamal Charles, and quite interesting the fact that Andy Reid went from Philadelphia down to Kansas City and kind of really instilling that style of play and really, I think, putting into the hands of Jamal Charles there and having him do some good things under Andy Reid as well. What's there to say about LaShawn McCoy? As I said, I think he's a very similar back. He's definitely kind of the guy who likes to change the direction. He's not one of those guys who's going to run you over type of thing. In 2010, he was 4th all-purpose yards. 2011, 4th in rushing. Had a bad 2012 year, which was the end of the Andy Reid era. We really were basically absolutely horrific that season, so I give him the pass that year. Last year, he was number 1 in all-purpose yards and rushing yards. And this year, with a banged-up offensive line and a kind of a mediocre, to say the least, first half of the season, he's now 4th in rushing yards for the league this year. And yeah, as I said, I mean, he's one of those guys who has a lot of change of direction. He'll make you miss. He can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. And my personal favorite is the fact that he left a 20-cent tip on a $61 bill in Philadelphia. They were so ticked off at him that the owners took a snapshot of the receipt and posted it online. He said, "Hey, I don't tip for bad service, guys."
Hey.
As wait staff, I respect that.
You don't do it.
Yeah.
Bad service, you don't pay.
Bad service, you don't tip. Fair enough. I'm just curious though. Was he eating a cheesesteak? Was it a $61 cheesesteak?
It wasn't. It was not. He was there with a bunch of buddies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even going.
He's $61 worth of
$61
cheese.
worth of cheesesteaks. Yeah, he's not an
Just
offensive
kept
lineman.
going.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dave, who you got?
I got DeMarco Murray of the Dallas
He
Cowboys.
can't get off the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You are so weird,
I'm
man.
gone a week, and I
You're
guess I'm being
weird.
punished this
Bring
week.
out the
So I'm all
lasso.
Cowboys.
He's a cowboy.
Okay, unless you've been in the deep Siberian forest this fall, I mean, who hasn't heard of this guy? I mean, he's in his 4th year at Dallas. His first
Say
year.
his name yet. We haven't heard you say his name yet.
DeMarco Murray.
Oh, sorry. Now
Unless
I
you-
know.
It's in his 4th year at Dallas. His first year, he didn't play all that much. He played 8 games. He was a rookie. He didn't play all that much. Dallas didn't have a line that they do now. But this year, I mean, he already has 4,300 yards rushing in 3.5 years of playing. 24 TDs. These are huge numbers for a running back in this day and age, which Joe might have mentioned earlier, which I kind of disagree. I think a good running game makes a complete football
No,
team.
I'm talking about the running backs, though.
Yeah,
The
yard-
understand.
the
I
yardage
understand
stats and
what
that
I
stuff.
think. I don't
There's
know.
still a lot
We'll
of
see.
running backs,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
running
well, I
yards.
think the Patriots
but,
got
yeah.
20 on their roster, so
That's
Yeah,
that's exactly his point.
but that's
exactly
the point.
his
that's the point.
They're
This
talking
guy-
about individual
Gotcha.
Hall of Fame type backs versus
Yeah,
running
it's
by
gonna be-
committee and
well,
stuff.
you see how
so.
long it took to break Jim Brown's records. I
It's
mean,
like in baseball where you got the complete games versus the relievers. I mean, it's just a transitional era. But go on.
I agree with you. I
All right,
agree with
yeah.
you. This year he's already got 1,600 yards, ladies and gentlemen. That's huge numbers. At this pace, with what's left of the season, he could break 2,000 this year.
Well, especially they're playing Philly again, so they'll probably put up.
I will let
quite a
you
few.
know
We're
we
talking
held
about-
him under 80 yards
In Dallas.
on Thanksgiving
In
in Dallas.
Well, that's he was thinking
Respect.
about turkey though. He had turkey on the brain.
Or he done turducken.
Now,
Turducken
he
on
does
the
got
brain.
9 TDs. He's averaging 5 yards per carry, which is huge in the NFL.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And all this being said,
Less than
I'm gonna
5.6, but
mix it
it's
up a little
nice.
bit.
Yeah, ultimately.
One has to take into account that this is support from arguably the best offensive line in football right now, which is the offensive line of the Dallas Cowboys. Playing for, let's say, a Browns team or maybe even a Buffalo Bills team or a Jacksonville team, he might not have these yards, but Dallas are.
Browns or Jacksonville.
Well, we're always like, you know, when you play for a
Or Tampa
crappy
Bay.
team, like Browns.
Dallas arguably has the best offensive line right now, and this is arguably, we can go back and forth on this one. My question is, can he continue this momentum going into the postseason? We will see. But I like Murray and what he's done. I don't see him doing this year in and year out.
He will not continue this into the postseason because Dallas,
That's
my
going to make
friends,
the postseason.
will miss the
They're going to be
playoffs.
the first one
I
out.
covered
so.
that earlier.
Yes, you did.
I covered that earlier, Dave.
All right. Another person being punished by having to deal with a running back they don't love. Katie.
When I'm going to talk about a rookie, namely Le'Veon Bell. The fact that he plays for the Steelers, this is mediated by the fact that he is from Columbus, which I only found out this week doing my research. Flew completely under the radar in Ohio to the point that he wasn't even looked at by Ohio State. Ends up playing in the Big Ten, however. At Michigan State, picked up. Yes, it could be worse. It could be Michigan,
Yeah.
but at any rate, being a good college player and being a good pro player is not a one-to-one relationship. We've seen that work. Flying under the radar and then becoming Tom Brady, being picked 199th overall, and then becoming Tom Brady.
Yep.
Conversely,
Ryan Leaf.
Ryan Leaf, yes,
Yeah,
for example. So
Ryan Leaf.
that was it. Thank
There
you
are-
for
yeah, there
that
are other ways
excellent
to go,
counter
yeah.
example. Nonetheless, this kid gets picked up in the second round, 48th overall pick, and has already set records in his rookie season. Namely, rookie record for yards from scrimmage for a rookie, record for most consecutive games with 200 plus yards from scrimmage, tied with Walter Payton at 3, but still 200 plus yards from scrimmage is impressive.
Most pot found in his vehicle on the way to preseason games.
Yeah, but he has to split that with LeGarrette Blount.
Exactly.
So he only gets
Yeah.
half credit
All
for
right,
that.
half- but it was his car.
Yeah.
All right, anyway.
All right. Okay.
And like I said, and last week,
his
just
car,
an
that's it,
impressive performance against the Bengals. I swear, I felt like every play they were calling his name, and he put up 37 fantasy points or something ridiculous. 41 fantasy
Thank you
points.
there from
I
very well behaved.
I believe my husband's opponent had him, and that's why we were following the pointage quite closely. I think we're going to see a lot more from him and hear a lot more from him. And I think he's going to be.
I agree.
Roethlisberger is going to be willing and ready to hand off the ball to him. He's made very few mistakes in terms of fumbles. He's proved quick, agile, fun to watch. And I think in his rookie season, I'm already impressed. I think he's up and coming. I wish they'd trade him to anybody but the Steelers. But nonetheless, I will give some love to an Ohio boy, Mr. Le'Veon Bell.
All right.
Okay, well, that's about it for our first half. We're going to take just a real short little 5-minute break here or so, and then we'll be back for the second half. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Exactly.
All right.
So,
Yeah, I'm not sure we're gonna do
Yeah,
that.
we
again.
just get Dave on the end.
That's all right. That's all right. You guys, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. All right.
We stand alone.
All right. Welcome back. Second half of Touchdown. Gonna try to run through this real quick so we get upstairs in time to watch the rest of the games. Last week's picks: Kansas City at Arizona. Unfortunately, Arizona won. The only person to take them was Chris. Seattle at Philadelphia. Unfortunately, Seattle won. The only person to take him was our absent colleague Mark. Indianapolis at Cleveland. Joel, Mark, and Chris all had Indianapolis, who pulled it out at the last second. Dave and Katie had Cleveland.
and a side note, Katie nearly died.
Yeah, I believe it.
I
Yeah.
had an
It was
epic
bad.
meltdown
I heard
after
your
that.
moans in Salzburg, by the way.
Baltimore at
Awkward.
Miami.
Thanks, Dave.
Baltimore at Miami. Myself and Katie took Miami. The rest of the crew took Baltimore. Baltimore won it. And New England at San Diego. Philly Chris was the lone person calling for the Chargers. They went down. So, on the week, it was not terribly impressive, except for our absent colleague Mark, who went 4-1. Philly Chris went 3-2. Myself and Dave 2-3, and Katie bottomed us out at 1-4.
I think it was just ticked that you missed the week last week, so I went against the Pats. Thanks, jerk.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
And since he wasn't there, I
He
went
was
for the
lashing,
Pats.
lashing out at the father figure type
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
That's strange. You go for the Pats.
All right. Upcoming games. We're going to kick off this week with Dave doing San Francisco at Seattle.
Well, I ain't much to say about this game, ladies and germs. What is the drama going on in San Francisco right now? The 49ers losing to Oakland this past week. Hello.
I mean,
please,
only a
please,
handful of
Louise.
other teams have done that, right?
Yeah, there's not many teams that have done that. So.
They are going into Seattle. Seattle, their offense is, on and off, but their defense is back on a roll. Especially.
Yeah.
We've seen this in the last 3 or 4
No,
games.
they're crazy good.
Unless some miracle on 34th Street or something like that happens this week in New York, which the energy flies over San Francisco area. I do not see the 49ers even coming close with this one. Seattle looks like a team on a roll right now. They're going to be tough to beat. Whoever they end up playing, they're still looking at an outside chance, San Francisco, for a wild card, but a lot's got to happen in the next couple of weeks. I see Seattle winning easily at home this game.
Anybody want to take the Niners real quick, or can we just?
No.
What is Mark?
Yeah, let's move
No.
on. Mark didn't send me his picks, so he's not
I
going to
would
be
say
official.
Mark said the 49ers.
Mark said the 49ers.
That's it.
Mark goes
That's all I
with
gotta
San Francisco, just to be
He's gonna be
contrary.
5-0 this week as we pick him. Yeah.
All right, I got next Denver at San Diego. The Donkeys pulled out a tough 24-17 win over Buffalo last week, while the San Diego Superchargers lost a tough game at home to the New England Patriots. Denver's now got a 2-game lead in the AFC West and can close out the division with a win tonight. They've been leaning on the running game recently behind C.J. Anderson and resting Peyton, who looks just a little bit dodgy, a little peaked. But I think that tonight we're going to see that turn around a little bit. I think Denver's going to come out throwing, and they're going to put up some big points. Phillip Rivers, the quarterback for San Diego, has been quite inconsistent this season. Same with their whole offense. They've had games where they looked like world beaters and games where they scored 0 points. I see this one leaning more towards the second option. I actually see San Diego falling off the face in the next few weeks, but we'll see. They could surprise me. Anyway, Denver, as much as I hate to say it, driving home for the big win.
I'm gonna second Denver. Denver on the rise, and San Diego just big peaks and valleys. You never know quite which team will show up. So I give it to Denver as well.
I don't make a lot of right calls on this in this show actually, but we had that 1 week where we had the team on the down and the team on the rise. My team on the rise was the Chicago Bears, which that was pretty good.
Yeah,
But my
hey,
team on the
solid.
down were the San Diego Chargers, and I see them still being down. They've got some question marks in the backfield. Ryan Matthews looks like he's either questionable or not really going to play. And what do you have after that? Not a lot. Denver away.
Boy, I'm gonna give you guys. I think you probably have already caught up. I'm gonna go with the Chargers. I
Wow.
got a feeling that the Chargers are gonna win it
I
all.
got
It's
a
gonna be a
feeling.
it's gonna be a hot one, and they're probably the nicest. You said the nicest weather in the country. In San
Beautiful
Diego.
there.
Beautiful weather.
I got the
Yeah.
Chargers pulling this one out. Unfortunately for you, Joel, because it'll make it. The
It'll make it
Chiefs
tough
looking
for us,
outside
yeah.
looking in, but I got the Chargers pulling off the upset. You heard it here first.
Okay.
Was that your bold prediction of the week?
Yeah, I just
semi-bold.
I have to
Yeah.
kind of agree with what Joel's saying. I think Peyton just does not look. It's so
Hey.
sharp, and I think a key turnover here or there late.
You're agreeing with something that
Yeah,
I just
that's
think- I
it's a
just
crazy
think
week.
Peyton
Crazy
has-
week.
Peyton just he doesn't got that zip in his shoulder right now.
Zippity-doo, yeah.
And the Chargers did put pressure on Brady last week, if you noticed, but they did keep him scoreless in the second half. But I like the Chargers. Going out on a limb, I'm going to go with the
Right.
Chargers.
How did the Patriots do in the red zone?
Oh, they did quite well. Let me explain that to you. I'll explain that in next week's episode.
Yeah, next week.
Okay?
All right, we'll save that for later. All right, Philly Chris, what do you got for us this week? Is there a game that's worth talking about in the NFC East, perhaps?
I'm really, in fact, guys, there's blue in my watch band, and I'm taking it off right now.
All right, fair enough.
I'm taking
Yeah.
the watch off right now.
Get it out
I
of here.
specifically wore no blue today, and I just looked at my arm and I saw it and I had to take it off.
What about
Wow, I mean, this week at home in Philadelphia, Dallas coming to town, both teams at 9-4. If we turn back the clock 2 weeks to Thanksgiving, there was so much momentum on the Philadelphia Eagles side of things. They go away, win 33-10, absolutely make the Cowgirls look like, well, the Cowgirls. And then, hey, what was going to happen the following week? Dallas goes and plays the not-so-fantastic Chicago Bears. They
Well,
absolutely
offensively.
demolish them. And we get our blocks knocked off. Tom, you were correct. I'm sorry to say that. Next time you're not invited to my place when Seattle's playing Philadelphia, but that's a side topic. So the question here at this time, as stated, 2 9-4 teams. Philadelphia is 6-1 after the loss last week at home. Dallas actually 6-0 on the road. And if you look at the way the NFC is shaping up at this point, there will be a team at 9-4 currently that will miss the playoffs. So right now you have Dallas looking on the out, looking in. So if the season stopped now, they would be the team that would miss the playoffs. So the importance of this football game for both teams is absolutely enormous. I would say maybe it's a little bit more important for the Cowboys, only because, as stated, they're looking on the out, looking in, number one. And next week they play the Indianapolis Colts, which is not a cupcake. But at the same time, gosh, what's going to happen? Eagles need to protect the football, ladies and gentlemen. There's 30 turnovers. They have the most turnovers in the league. Fortunately, they're actually forcing a few as well. But you just can't win football games and get deep into the playoffs or expect to make the playoffs even if you're turning the football over as much as they are. You got a tough running force, obviously, with DeMarco Murray, which we speak basically week in, week out. Last week in Thanksgiving, they did fantastic. They held him under 80 yards rushing, put a lot of pressure on Tony Romo. I mean, if I were to think about what was really the status at that week compared to what the status is this week, it's changed absolutely completely. Can Mark Sanchez continue? What's going to happen this week? You go exactly.
What are you just flipping coin?
Make a pick, man. Make a pick.
For me, the side of the topic is it's the cold weather, it's the home field advantage, it's the absolute hatred that the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Eagles fans have for the Dallas Cowboys, and we have Philadelphia heading out 10-4 out this week. Go Birds.
Kind of side with you there. I think playing in Philadelphia, this is a divisional team. We're both looking at 9-4. Dallas plays very well away than they do in Texas on the Stadium of God or
Prison.
whatever. But they are going to Philadelphia. Second, it's late in the season. They are playing a team that they absolutely detest each other. Philadelphia pulls away and wins this one.
I was also going to give them the weather advantage, and also just because I don't really love Dallas.
So great.
I'm going to go with the Eagles as well.
Yeah.
Gosh, short and simple.
Man, is this one of those where I flip over just to disagree with everybody? Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Hang on a sec. What month is this? Is this December?
This is December.
Yeah.
Yes.
Time for Dallas
in
to
December.
choke. There we go.
Tony Romo.
Forgot about that.
Tony. Yeah, they'll probably lose by 20 at that point. Yeah. I'm going Philly.
No for Romo.
Katie, who you got?
Wait, I want to think that Mark then picks Dallas.
Yeah, Mark obviously goes Dallas.
There we go. All right. We've got 20 minutes till the anxiety-filled game of the season in my beautiful AFC North. Bengals at the Browns. So, Battle of Ohio, and the big question on everyone's mind is, shall I say it, wild card Johnny Manziel will get his first start.
Oh, I thought we were worried about whether or not Josh Gordon would get picked up between now and game time.
Yeah,
for some sort of infraction.
he's probably rolled a blunt before practice.
Doesn't
but
smoke it. Guys,
Yeah.
He's
It
done.
might be celebratory.
Yeah.
Post game. Who
Fair
knows?
enough.
I hope it's celebratory post game. Josh, say no to drugs. But still,
And kids.
Johnny Manziel is definitely a big wild card, and whether this is going to work in the Browns' favor or against them, with him being inexperienced on the field, or with the Bengals not having a real concept of how to defend him or play defense against him, shall I say? Because nobody knows right now.
So you
He's
think
been
the Bengals-
interesting. Shut up. He's been interesting to watch in the couple of snaps he's played, but this will be the first time for the start, and weather in Cleveland's supposed to be brutal. I really don't. I want to pick the Browns, but then I feel like that's a jinx. I think also it's December going towards the playoffs. Now, typically the Bengals choke
In the playoffs, right.
Now, granted, last week they decided that they just really didn't want to show up in the second half and managed to it was an abysmal turn of events.
Well,
Granted, the Browns didn't show up in the second half either, so maybe the team that puts together a full game wins this. I'm giving it to Threat Manziel. I refuse to call him by his nickname. You have to earn that nickname. Show it to me today, baby. I say the Browns pull it off.
Wow. Gosh. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Browns,
You
too.
got this.
Because if I remember right, the last time they met in Cincinnati, the Browns absolutely destroyed
Dominated them, but
and it's been a few weeks since Andy Dalton completely disappeared, so I think he's probably due for that. It seems to happen at least on a semi-regular basis as opposed to by the calendar month. Yeah, so I think Cleveland pulls it out.
Wow, from my side of things, I think this is going to be a semi-blowout one way or the other, because I think Manziel's either going to come charging in there, firing on all cylinders. There's going to be this adrenaline rush that's going to be coming in there.
that name.
And as a result, the Browns and the fury that's going to be happening there could take them over. At the same time, it might be a little bit too much adrenaline, and it swings in the other direction. I'm on the Katie bandwagon. Cleveland.
Ooh.
Gotta, this is probably, other than Dallas traveling to Philadelphia, this is probably one of the most anticipated games coming up this week.
Did you
Absolutely.
see what this did to broadcast schedules?
Yes.
There's a great graphic of how all of a sudden everybody switched to showing this as their first game.
But I got to say that I think Katie touched on it a little bit earlier. I got to say that the coaching staff, by putting in Johnny Manziel in, how will Cincinnati defend this guy? He can run the ball. The guy can take off. And how are you going to defend him? They are playing in the dog pound, and they're going to be nasty on a cold December day in Ohio. I think the Browns walk away easily with a victory because I think Cincinnati showed nothing last week on stopping the run or stopping the pass or doing anything against Pittsburgh. And they lost at home. I see the Browns winning this one to make it just that more interesting in the division.
Of
Yeah,
course.
because who wants a runaway first place? We need
to give Katie an official heart attack by the time
Yeah.
the season's
Yeah.
over, actually.
We might see that in about 3.5 hours.
Yeah. All right. So Mark takes Cincinnati then. Is what I'm
Very
what I'm
nice,
hearing.
very
All right.
Done.
Dave,
Boy,
working you like a
New England.
workhorse. One more game here, buddy.
Yeah. New England started this year and lost at home to Miami. And the big talk is, what is with Brady? What's with the Patriots? Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. A whole different scenario going right now. Whether you pick the Packers or New England, the two hottest teams right now in the NFL. And I wasn't too impressed with the Packers last week in Atlanta because Atlanta almost pulled this one away. Watch Tom Brady. Watch this guy. Whether you love him or you hate him, he's running up to second string offensive linemen and patting him on the back. The guy's an absolute psycho. His wife just signed a contract with Chanel No. 5. I mean, they're happy in the Brady household right now. And Miami is not playing very well in the cold, and you are going to New England. It's going to be a little nippy up there, as they say. Third quarter, New England walks away with it, wins easily. And I'm sorry about this, Mark Bartman, my colleague out there somewhere. This would probably eliminate the Dolphins from any playoff hopes.
My big question is if Tom Brady goes for a high five on the sideline from his teammates, is anybody going to high five him? 'Cause I love that video online where he's like, somebody give me a high five. Everybody just kind of walks right by.
But did you all see
It's so
that video
sad.
where he runs down the sideline when Edelman scores on the punt return? He goes, "I just want to see my guy."
Yeah, see, that's why he's going with like the butt pat and stuff because nobody can deny him at that point. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to get left up
You know
high.
what? Whether I was a Patriot fan or not, I'd like to add that Tom Brady is one of my favorite guys out there because he is raising my 2 children.
Yeah.
If he was a Pats fan or not.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Either way. Yeah.
Good. On that note, cheers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I see these 2 helmets right here, and I like the red face mask. I guess. I mean,
He makes
I
a
have-
color choice.
I have absolutely no reason to believe that the Miami Dolphins can come up to Foxborough and win a football game there. Patriots.
This game, it's almost just about because you got 2 walks next week. You got Buffalo, I think, and then I don't know. I think we're playing Jacksonville or something. It doesn't matter.
I'm surprised he didn't throw the Browns in there just for fun.
Winning this game will almost ensure home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and this is big for Belichick. It's tough to win in Foxborough.
Of course.
I agree. I think that the Pats will take it, and I don't like to take the Pats, but I think now.
Taking the Pats.
I know. But I think something that New England needs to be careful of is not being too cocky and thinking that this is, oh yeah, we can take care of Cleveland.
Cleveland,
We take
Miami,
care of
whatever.
Miami at home, like it's a walk in the park. I think they need to keep their egos in check and make sure that they don't get surprised by Miami.
Tough defense, the Dolphins, that's for sure, and they are tough against the run.
I'm not sure that they'll put up as many points as they might against some other teams. I think that it may be a little more low scoring than it could be, but let's see. I will hesitantly take
What's
the
the frozen
Patriots.
tundra right now? It's pretty wet up there in Foxborough. It doesn't look good the weather.
Yeah, earlier in the season, I was definitely trying to keep that drama alive, hoping that Miami would head into this game needing just a win to pull tide in the division or something that would motivate them and make it interesting and exciting. It doesn't appear to be the case, obviously. New England has once again run away with the East, and don't think that this is going to be any different this week. New England wins it, and probably fairly easily.
Well, Mark, probably being a Dolphins fan, will pick the
Dolphins.
Dolphins.
There we go.
Well, yeah, he's stuck with the Dolphins apparently
buddy.
this week. Poor thing.
Sorry, Mark.
All right. Well, second half was more like a fourth quarter or a final eighth or something, but we've all
Did
got
the
football
2-minute
to
drill
watch.
there,
Yeah,
so-
2-minute drill. So fastest 2 minutes in Golden Harp, I guess. So, all right. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next week on Touchdown. Bye bye. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, the
Hey,
one man
there's that
wave. There we
one-man
go.
wave, yeah.